Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle Weinblatt. I am the Chief Product Officer at Entelo, and we are doing the podcast by the pool today at the HR Technology Conference. I have an extremely special guest today who is Doug Berg. And Doug is an amazing entrepreneur in the HR tech space, has been an advisor to me as well as to John Bishke. And we are super excited to chat with you today, Doug.
Awesome.
So
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Can you tell everyone listening a little bit more about your background and also about your current company?
Sure, yeah. So I've been called a technoholic. I started as a tech guy, but then got into the recruiting and staffing business. So I've built and scaled probably 4 larger talent technology companies. The most notable was probably Jobs to Web, where we built that from Minneapolis and sold it to Success Factors back in 2011. And it continues to be a very important part of their recruitment marketing platform in their recruiting space. So, but I was also the founder of techies.com, which was a job board for tech folks way back in the .com bubble days. So I've built a marketplace, kind of like a LinkedIn for technology folks before we even knew what LinkedIn was.
That's crazy.
And we got close to going public with that company until the .com bubble burst. But just have learned a lot about how to build technology and apply it to the productivity side of recruiting and staffing and marketplaces. And working with Jobs to Web, I got the good fortune of working with about 200 global companies and pretty much architected their entire end-to-end recruiting strategy.
Crazy.
So it's been a really fun journey for me to learn how to bring technology, practical technology, into the recruiting world, especially how it gets adopted by enterprise customers, and just to see the evolution of technology from the fax machine to chatbots and AI and all this other fun stuff that we see downstairs in the expo. Yeah.
So crazy. Yeah. So, I mean, what keeps you coming back? I mean, you started 4 companies in this space. Like, are you a masochist or like,
no.
a lot of people find it hard.
I get that question a lot. And I've been thinking about it because everyone thinks, and I've had some good exits, I should just quit. But this is like my music, And if a great actor goes out and wins a Golden Globe Award, people don't tell him to stop acting. Some do, I guess. But no, you want to know what their next movie's going to be. And in a way, I still enjoy doing this. And I've got a lot of the folks that have been around me in my other businesses, and kind of this is their turn now to have a good opportunity. Yeah. And, my clients, I've always treated them like they're my great friends and family. And so I really enjoy the network, kind of they're my second family, if you will, of people that I love to just continue to bring innovation for. So it's just fun. I'll probably not operate a company next. I'll probably continue to advise and invest like I've done with you, because that keeps me close to it without having to carry it, if you will.
Oh, it makes perfect sense, and I obviously really appreciate your help with our evolution. It was an absolute critical advice that you gave us, so thank you again.
Always.
So, you've had so much experience since the fax machine to AI, and you see all of the trends today in the expo hall. What is the most important trend that you're seeing in HR tech? What are you most excited about?
So look, we're in a really interesting era right now where everybody's got access to everybody. The funniest thing I ever saw come across my screen about a year ago was on LinkedIn, and you know how you can see people's posts, and somebody had posted this message that says, does anyone have first level access to Jeff Weiner, the CEO of LinkedIn? And in the comment right below was Jeff Weiner saying, I do. And it just goes to show that we're in an economy where getting access to people is not a thing anymore. That used to be the thing. How you're engaging with people, how you compel them to spend time with you. And I really don't think we have a talent shortage. I think we have an attention span shortage. And so, as you and I know, companies have these platforms and these systems, and they might you could take a copy of LinkedIn and put it into your ATS, and it would still be worthless. unless you know how to engage. And so knowledge, adding insight, and knowing who and how to engage with people is absolutely the crown jewels of who's going to win in the talent industry in the next coming years.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So can you share with our listeners an example of amazing engagement? Like how, can someone really get attention or get someone's attention in this environment with so much noise? What should they say?
Yeah, I like to say it's less about the channel and it's more about the conversation. And I think candidate-driven conversations are going to become so much more important than just marketing messages. So if you're talking with a candidate, like I'm talking to you, I want to start the conversation based on who you are and what interests you. And so I've always thought that, like, especially career sites are backwards. Like, I don't know if you've joined Pinterest lately or Twitter.
I have not. I joined Twitter many years ago. Admittedly, I don't use it that much.
Yeah. But I mean, if you think of like the standard career site or job site, it always starts with, hey, search jobs. So come and find opportunities in us.
Right.
It's never tell us about you, candidate, before we tell you about us and our company. And when you join Pinterest, the very first thing they do is they ask you, what are your interests? What are you interested in? And that's how they start to draw you in and then bring content back to you. We throw the kitchen sink at candidates with our career site, our branding, our messaging, and all of that. And I think there's going to be a huge shift away from what I'll call even just messaging and branding, and it's going to be much more about experience. I think the experience of how I interact with your company, how I backdoor you through my LinkedIn channel to find a job and just completely skip all of your front door messaging and all of that. I still have to go through your process, but I'm still astonished at how much the technology that companies use to power their strategy has not changed. And it needs to be completely inverted. And I think that would benefit not only candidates, but I think technologies like Convey IQ, like what you can learn, using other companies like Entelo to have better insights about who your candidates are, not just their skills, but their cultural interests, their attributes. I think so much more of having that data enriched and being able to use it to engage people with things that they care about is the winner.
Yeah.
And yet I see it so little. And I know that everyone wants to build a chatbot, but if that chatbot isn't conversing with someone in a meaningful way, it's going to fall flat. And I see a lot of that.
Yeah, I do too. I am, I guess, notorious for going on to career sites. You actually taught me this and actually applying for jobs to do research. And so I was doing research on chatbots, and one of the funny things in the office is, can Danielle break a chatbot today? So how many jobs can I actually get hired for that I am completely unqualified for? And I've done this with a lot of companies. And so, I'm curious to know if you think that there are any companies out there that have really nailed this AI game. Has anyone really started to develop technology that can converse in a meaningful way, really understanding what candidates want? Or is this all just a bunch of BS?
So I think we're on the very front end of it. I've seen a couple that are doing well. But what's interesting is I don't think they're doing well because of always their technology. I think they're doing well because they'll sit with a company and they'll architect what the conversation's going to be. What are all the questions that candidates are asking?
Right.
It's almost like you have to do an over-the-shoulder listening session with the team and analyze all the conversations. And once you get that asset base of all of those interactions, the AI itself is only as smart as the assets and the architecture you put in, because a candidate might, hi, let's chat. Oh, you're a Python developer. Oh, how many years of Python have you done? That seems to be kind of where people are at. But the minute that the candidate changes the conversation and says, can I work virtually? Well, if the chatbot doesn't know how to answer that question, all of our positions are based upon qualification. The generic stuff is not going to provide the experience, I don't think, that people that actually went, these are the things candidates might talk about, the benefits. Is it a small team? Is it a big team? How long are your sprints? Those are the questions that compel candidates to want to participate. But unless you get that into the asset, it's not going to really. And so I think that will continue to evolve.
Yeah.
But the technologies that get that right out of the gate and actually help companies to get that right will be the winners.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds just very time consuming to architect something like that. So, it's hard to get onboarded if it requires all of that input.
Yeah.
So it's going to have to get better naturally.
And there's friction in the recruiting ranks. I would have thought that recruiters would love this technology, but at large, the sentiment is they hate the technology because they still think that they are the only ones that can do it right.
Yeah.
But that's what created the black hole problem that we were trying to solve, because just humanly, people can't have 1,000 simultaneous conversations.
Yeah.
And yet that might be how many people are on the other side of the career site. So we have to solve this problem at scale.
Yeah.
And the more that recruiters could participate with it, I think will allow them to enjoy the benefits of it and really focus on the part of the recruiting relationship that they all want to do anyhow,
right,
which is the results-oriented part.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do you think technologists should engage with recruiters? Because you talk a little bit about the mindset shift that a lot of people in the industry need to have in order to adopt new technology. So how do you enable change management? How do you think about changing the perspective of talent acquisition when often they're still in antiquity?
Yeah, it is. So what's interesting, the only time I've seen really good adoption and transition happen is when, especially in larger recruiting teams, it has to be modeled. I always like to say it has to be caught and not taught. So if I see it happening and somebody using the new thing and it's really working, that's when I want to replicate it for myself to make sure that I can actually see it happen, as opposed to it being put on me and forced on me, and yet here's another new platform that I'm supposed to use, and I hate all of our other platforms, so I go into rebel mode and I use my spreadsheets and my email, and I would say at least 60% of the industry is still in that kind of recruiting rebellion mode where they're using, if you will, old antiquated technology as opposed to really embracing the new stuff. And yet, in every company, there's always what I'll call one or two rapid adopters that really know how to embrace this stuff and then model it. Todd Davis, for example, at Indeed, is probably one of the neatest guys that will go learn a new thing and then turn around and pollinate it across the entire recruiting organization. He's brilliant at it. And so when you see people like that and they're your bearers of new technology, getting to know them, getting them to love the technology, and then getting them to model it and show it to people is where you really. And if you don't have one of those people in your recruiting org, you need to find one.
Right. No, that's...
They speak at every conference. You do everything you can to recruit them and get them to come to your company because they're the ones that help bring transition forward.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So my last question for you is, how do you do it, Doug Berg? I mean, you are able to spot trends in different industries, think about how they can apply to recruitment. I mean, I think you did that with marketing. You were one of the first to recognize that sales and marketing was far ahead of where recruitment was, and they were super similar. How do you just see things differently than everybody else to be able to create innovative products?
That's a great question. One, it started because I'm originally a technologist, so I know what's possible, right? Second, I've had to, as I've grown my businesses, had to solve these problems for myself. But then I've also failed a lot too, and you have to learn from those failing experiments, because you might have the greatest idea on the planet. I mean, I'll tell a funny story. Like, my first job as a techie was to replace IBM Selectric typewriters.
Oh my gosh.
With older users with a PC. And so I'm all passionate. I love PCs, and I can't wait to replace the typewriter. And I literally got hit over the head with a purse by one of the women who says, "You're not taking my typewriter." She would not let me take her typewriter. But until I sat down with those users and I said, "Tell me what you hate about the typewriter." And the one thing they hated was having to get, when you mistyped a word, the white out and back it up and retype. I didn't know you actually knew that.
Yes.
And so when I said, "Can I just show you how you would do that on a PC when you mistype a letter?" And I powered it up and they mistyped a word and you just hit the backspace and then keep typing, all of a sudden they gave up the typewriter.
That's great.
And the same truth is what happens with every featural thing you bring into the market. So even when I would try to launch talent communities, for the candidates, introducing another step before the apply process was an absolute, the companies, when we would say, hey, let's have everyone join the talent community before starting a 1 hour horrible apply process.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. We can't add another step. This is the worst thing ever. And so we had that pushback mentality every time. And so until we had a heroic customer say, look, it's okay, let's do this. Because if it helps us to remarket and retarget the non-selected applicants, which is 99% of the people,
right?
Not to mention 60% of people were bailing out of the application process. So there's talent spilling out of these horrible processes. But within all of the sudden, in one day, we had 7,000 people join the talent community at one company.
Yeah.
And within 1 year, they had over 3 million candidates that had joined their talent community. And now 40% of their hires were coming from candidates that had joined the talent community who didn't finish the apply process the first time and yet came back and reapplied for jobs later.
Yeah.
And there was just a tremendous amount of benefits. But until that first company took that heroic step to say this is actually a really good benefit, it's not a bad thing, I would have never have learned from my clients, how do I bring new ideas like this with good numbers, with good facts, with a good business case to help them to know that what you think is a bad thing is actually the thing that might save your patootie.
Amazing.
But you really have to think about it at that level in order to bring those things. And it's funner than heck to find that stuff and to help evolve things. So.
Well, you have many, many, many times, and you continue to advise and help other entrepreneurs that want to do the same. So thank you so much, Doug. This was really fun, and I wish you a successful HR tech, and
Awesome.
I will see you later.
Well, and I can't wait to see what you guys are going to be doing with Convey and Entelo. So I'm excited to watch that.
Thanks, Doug.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining.